Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. Cursed by Ancient Evil. Scary story, published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. The Discovery. The sun was beginning to set over the rugged landscape of the Appalachian Mountains, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into eternity. Alex Carson, a seasoned archaeologist with a sharp mind and a skeptical heart, stood at the edge of an ancient clearing, his eyes scanning the terrain with a mix of curiosity and caution. Beside him, his team spread out, setting up their equipment. Sarah, the dedicated historian, Mark, the tech expert with a penchant for gadgets, and Lisa, the eager student intern, wide-eyed and excited. "This place has a history," Sarah said, her voice carrying a note of reverence. "I've been reading up on the local legends. They say this area is cursed." Alex chuckled, shaking his head. "Every old site has its share of ghost stories. Let's focus on the facts." The remote mountain town of Ravenswood had an air of quiet desolation. The few residents they encountered had been less than welcoming, their warnings about disturbing the burial site delivered with grim faces and hushed tones. Alex, ever the skeptic, had brushed them off as mere superstition. As they began their excavation, the atmosphere grew increasingly eerie. A sudden chill swept through the clearing, causing Lisa to shiver despite the warm summer evening. Mark glanced up from his equipment, his face pale. "Did anyone else feel that?" "Just the wind," Alex replied, though even he felt a twinge of unease. He shook it off and continued digging. Hours passed, and just as the last rays of sunlight vanished, Sarah's trowel struck something solid. "Got something," she called out, excitement replacing the earlier tension. The team gathered around as she carefully brushed away the dirt, revealing an ornate artifact, ancient and mysterious. "It's beautiful," Lisa whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "And dangerous," came a voice from behind them. The team turned to see an elderly man standing at the edge of the clearing, his weathered face etched with worry. "That artifact is cursed. It's brought nothing but death and sorrow to this town." Alex stood, his expression skeptical. "We appreciate the concern, sir. We're scientists." The man shook his head slowly. "You don't know what you're dealing with. Leave it be, for your own sakes." Ignoring the man's warnings, Alex carefully lifted the artifact, a strange sense of foreboding settling over him. As they packed up for the night, the clearing seemed to close in around them, shadows deepening and strange noises whispering through the trees. Back at their base camp, the unease lingered. Lisa glanced nervously at the artifact, now resting on a table under the harsh glare of their work lights. "Do you really think there's a curse?" "Of course not," Alex said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We'll document it and move on." But as the night wore on and the strange occurrences continued, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they had awakened something ancient and malevolent. The artifact, once a mere object of study, now seemed to pulse with a dark energy, a silent promise of the horrors yet to come. Chapter 2. The Curse Unleashed. The artifact lay on the table, casting long shadows under the harsh lights of the base camp. Alex stared at it, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Around him, his team moved with a nervous energy, the excitement of discovery overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. That night, sleep did not come easily. When it did, it brought nightmares. Alex dreamed of dark figures, their eyes empty and accusing, reaching out to drag him into the abyss. He woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. Across the camp, he heard Sarah's muffled cries, and Mark's frantic murmuring. The following morning, the team was subdued, their faces drawn and pale. "I had the most vivid nightmare," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "There were shadows and screams." "Me too," Mark added, rubbing his temples. "And I keep seeing things out of the corner of my eye. Like figures." Sarah, looking exhausted but determined, was already buried in her research. "There's something more to this artifact," she said, her eyes scanning ancient texts and local folklore. "The townspeople were right. This thing is cursed." She read aloud from an old journal. "It is said that the artifact brings darkness and death to those who disturb it. The curse manifests through nightmares, hallucinations, and, ultimately, death." "Great," Mark muttered, his frustration bubbling over. "Just what we needed." The air in the camp grew thick with tension. "We should destroy it," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "We can't let this curse take us." "No," Alex said firmly. "We need to study it, understand it. We can't just destroy something of such historical significance." "Historical significance?" Sarah snapped. "It's killing us, Alex. You need to take this seriously." The argument grew heated, voices rising as fear and frustration took hold. Outside, the weather had turned strange. A dense fog rolled in, and the air felt unnaturally cold. The birds, usually so noisy in the mornings, had fallen silent, and the forest around them seemed devoid of life. Alex stepped outside to clear his head, but the eerie quiet only amplified his unease. The fog clung to the ground, swirling in unnatural patterns. He heard a rustling in the underbrush and turned to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at him. He blinked, and they were gone. "Alex," Mark called from inside. "You need to see this." Alex re-entered the tent to find Sarah holding a faded photograph. It showed a group of people from the early 1900s standing around the same artifact. The faces were blurred, but their expressions were unmistakable terror and pain. "This is what happened to the last group that found it," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "They all died within a month." The reality of their situation hit Alex hard. The artifact wasn't just an archaeological find, it was a harbinger of doom. As the fog thickened outside and the shadows inside seemed to deepen, Alex realized they were in a fight for their lives against something ancient and malevolent. And the darkness was closing in. Chapter 3: The Darkness Spreads. The tension in the camp reached a breaking point as the fog rolled in thicker than ever, its chill biting through their clothes. Alex paced restlessly, his mind racing with the implications of Sarah's discovery. Outside, the eerie quiet was punctuated only by the occasional, unsettling sound scratches, rustles, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Suddenly, a loud, distressed scream pierced the night. The team scrambled outside, their breath visible in the freezing air. The town of Ravenswood lay in chaotic disarray. Shadows moved erratically through the fog, and the distant wail of sirens added to the sense of impending doom. Alex, Sarah, Mark, and Lisa rushed towards the town, only to be met by a horrifying sight. From the burial site, a grotesque army of zombies had emerged. Their movements were jerky and unnatural, their eyes hollow and lifeless. They staggered through the fog, their groans echoing through the streets. "Get to safety," Alex shouted to a group of panicked townspeople, ushering them towards a nearby church. The team immediately sprang into action, grabbing makeshift weapons, fire pokers, baseball bats, anything they could find. Mark and Lisa fought side by side, swinging wildly at the encroaching zombies. Mark's tech-savvy instincts took a backseat to raw survival skills as he lashed out, his face set in grim determination. Lisa, despite her fear, fought fiercely, her eyes blazing with a mix of terror and resolve. Sarah, though trembling, used her knowledge of ancient rituals to create barriers and wards. She muttered incantations from her research, trying to hold back the relentless tide of the undead. Her hands shook as she worked, but her focus was unwavering. Alex, caught in the middle of the chaos, felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He fought alongside his team, but his thoughts were consumed by the artifact. If the curse was manifesting this violently, they needed to act quickly. The battle was brutal and unrelenting. The zombies surged forward, their numbers seeming endless. Between the clashes, Alex could see the toll the fight was taking on his team. Mark's swings were becoming slower, his breaths labored. Lisa was visibly exhausted, her hands shaking as she tried to keep up the fight. Sarah's chants grew more frantic, her strength waning. In a brief lull, Alex pulled Sarah aside. "We need to figure out how to stop this. What did your research say about ending the curse?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted, her eyes wide with fear. "But we need to find a way to close the portal, or whatever's allowing them to come through." The zombies regrouped, more determined and vicious than before. The fight resumed with renewed ferocity. As the team battled on, the fog thickened, making every movement and sound more disorienting. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. With each passing minute, it became clearer that the team was fighting not just for their lives, but for the soul of the town itself. The darkness was spreading, and if they couldn't find a solution soon, they would be overrun. Chapter 4: The First Loss. The town of Ravenswood lay shrouded in an oppressive fog, its streets a battleground of shattered windows and scattered debris. The battle against the zombies had raged on throughout the night, each wave more relentless than the last. Alex, Sarah, and Lisa fought side by side, their breaths ragged and their bodies bruised. But their spirit was unbroken, or so they hoped. Amidst the chaos, Mark fought with a fierce determination. He had always been the tech expert, but tonight he was a warrior, swinging a baseball bat with a grim resolve. Alex saw him fend off a group of zombies, his eyes wide with fear, but his movements sure. Then, in a moment of horror, a particularly large zombie broke through Mark's defenses. It lunged at him, dragging him to the ground. Mark's scream was cut short by a crushing blow to his head. Alex, frozen in shock, could only watch as the life drained from his friend's eyes. "Mark!" Lisa's voice shattered the night, filled with raw, anguished grief. She fought her way through the horde, pushing past the undead to reach Mark's lifeless body. Tears streamed down her face as she knelt beside him, her hands trembling. Alex felt a profound sense of guilt and helplessness. "We should have been more prepared," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is my fault." Lisa's eyes, red and swollen, turned on Alex. "You brought us here. You didn't listen to the warnings. Now Mark's dead because of you." "Enough," Sarah's voice cut through the accusation. "Blaming Alex won't bring Mark back. We need to focus on stopping this." But the weight of their loss was undeniable. Mark's death was a brutal reminder of the stakes they faced. Team's morale crumbled, the sense of invulnerability shattered. Each member felt the sharp sting of mortality, and the curse's impact was more tangible than ever. In the quiet moments between battles, the grief was almost unbearable. Alex, standing apart from the others, felt the crushing weight of responsibility. He had led them into this nightmare, and now, as they fought for their lives, he was haunted by the specter of Mark's death. Sarah and Lisa, despite their exhaustion and fear, channeled their grief into determination. They scoured the remains of their research, desperate for a solution. Each day, the darkness grew stronger, but they refused to surrender. As the fog continued to envelop the town, the team came to a painful realization. Confronting evil required more than bravery, it demanded sacrifice. The personal cost of their battle was steep, and the threat was far from over. They had lost one of their own, but in his memory, they pressed on, driven by the hope that their struggle could end the curse and bring a semblance of peace to Ravenswood. The darkness loomed ever larger, but so did their resolve. The team was united by grief and a fierce determination to see this through, no matter the personal cost. The battle was far from over, and the true test of their courage had only just begun. Chapter 5. Unraveling the Mystery. The town of Ravenswood lay in a desolate state, its streets now eerily quiet, but for the occasional groan of the undead that still prowled in the shadows. Inside their makeshift base camp, Alex, Sarah, and Lisa huddled around a table strewn with ancient texts and hastily drawn maps. The weight of Mark's death hung heavily in the air, yet determination to end the curse drove them forward. Sarah's face was illuminated by the dim light of a lantern as she pored over a crumbling manuscript. Her fingers trembled as she translated the archaic symbols, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I've found something. There's an ancient ritual mentioned here, one that could potentially lift the curse." Alex leaned in, his eyes narrowing with hope and apprehension. "What does it entail?" Sarah took a deep breath, her face pale with concern. "The ritual requires us to journey to the heart of the burial site, where the artifact was originally buried. We need to perform the ceremony at the exact location where it was unearthed." Lisa's eyes widened. "That sounds incredibly dangerous. We're barely holding on as it is." Alex felt a heavy responsibility settle over him. "It's our only option. If we don't try, this curse will continue to spread. But it's dangerous. We're putting ourselves at great risk." The team fell into a tense silence. The debate was fierce. Lisa argued that they should focus on defending the town and finding another solution, while Sarah and Alex were adamant that the ritual was their best chance. The burden of leadership weighed heavily on Alex, torn between his responsibility for the team's safety and the urgent need to end the curse. As they prepared for the journey, the atmosphere grew increasingly foreboding. The fog thickened, curling around them like a living entity, and the air was filled with an unsettling chill. Shadows seemed to move with a will of their own, and disembodied whispers floated through the camp. Every creak and groan of the old buildings around them seemed amplified, intensifying their fear. Sarah took the lead in explaining the lore behind the artifact and the curse. The artifact was created by an ancient cult who believed it could control the forces of darkness. But they underestimated its power. It turned against them, and their final rites were supposed to seal its evil away forever. Alex's gaze hardened with resolve. "We need to get to the burial site and complete this ritual before it's too late." With their supplies packed and their minds steeled, the team set out into the fog-covered wilderness, their path illuminated only by the flickering light of their torches. Each step felt like a descent into a deeper darkness, the air thick with an ominous silence. The journey ahead was fraught with peril, but the hope of breaking the curse gave them the strength to press on. The weight of their past losses and the knowledge of what lay ahead made each step a battle against their own fears. They were not just walking into danger. They were stepping into the heart of the darkness that had claimed so much already. Chapter 6. The Descent. The fog pressed in around them, a suffocating shroud, as the team made their way deeper into the mountain wilderness. Their path was barely visible through the thickening mist, and each step seemed to lead them further into an encroaching darkness that felt almost sentient. The burial site loomed ahead, an ancient and foreboding entrance to the heart of the curse. Alex led the way, his flashlight piercing the darkness. Behind him, Sarah clutched the ancient text tightly, its pages flapping in the wind. Lisa followed closely, her eyes darting nervously at every sound. Despite their exhaustion, their resolve was palpable. The death of Mark had forged a fierce determination within them. The entrance to the burial site was a crumbling stone archway, half covered in moss and vines. As they stepped through, the air grew colder, and the very walls seemed to breathe with a malevolent presence. The tunnel ahead was narrow, its walls lined with grotesque carvings and symbols that seemed to writhe in the dim light. Suddenly, the ground beneath them gave way. Lisa screamed as she stumbled into a pit filled with sharp, rusted spikes. Alex and Sarah grabbed her arms, pulling her out just in time. The close call sent a shiver down their spines, a stark reminder of the deadly traps that awaited them. Navigating the burial site proved even more treacherous. The tunnels were a labyrinth of shifting walls and hidden dangers. Strange noises echoed around them, scratching, whispering, and occasional groans that made their skin crawl. Each turn felt like a step closer to madness. The team encountered more zombies, their reanimated bodies emerging from hidden alcoves. They fought with a fierce desperation, their movements fueled by both adrenaline and the fear of failure. Alex swung a heavy branch with all his might, his face set in grim determination. Sarah chanted protective incantations as she fought, her voice unwavering even as she stumbled. As they pressed forward, Sarah discovered a chamber filled with ancient relics and symbols, the site of the ritual they needed to perform. The eerie glow of the chamber's light revealed intricate carvings on the walls, a depiction of the curse's origin and the ritual meant to end it. The chamber's atmosphere was thick with tension. Shadows danced along the walls, and an oppressive silence hung over them. The ritual's completion would require each member of the team to face their deepest fears, a test that promised to reveal their true strength or break them entirely. Alex looked at his team, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow. Despite their exhaustion and fear, there was a newfound unity among them. They had come this far together, and now, as they prepared for the final confrontation, they knew they could only succeed if they faced the darkness as one. The air crackled with a palpable sense of impending doom as they began the ritual. The time for hesitation was over. The darkness was all around them, closing in as they reached for the last vestige of hope. Chapter 7: The Ritual. The chamber pulsed with an otherworldly glow as Alex, Sarah, and Lisa stood before the ancient altar, the epicenter of the curse's power. Shadows writhed on the walls, their movements mirroring the rising intensity of the darkness around them. The air was charged with malevolent energy, making it almost impossible to breathe. Sarah began arranging the ritual components, her hands trembling as she followed the ancient instructions. "We need to complete this quickly," she said, her voice tight with both fear and determination. "The curse is fighting back." Alex, feeling the weight of their situation, could barely focus. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to amplify his doubts and fears, each thought magnified into a monstrous apparition. He glanced at Lisa, who was setting up protective wards around them. Her face was pale but resolute. As Sarah chanted the incantations, the room seemed to constrict around them. The darkness thickened, and Alex felt an icy hand grip his heart. He was overwhelmed by a torrent of his own insecurities, his past mistakes, his guilt over Mark's death, and the fear that they were all doomed to fail. The shadows on the walls began to swirl violently, and the temperature dropped precipitously. "We're losing control," Sarah shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of the dark energy. "We need more time, but I don't know if we have it." Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a chilling wail echoed through the chamber. The zombies, drawn by the escalating power of the curse, began to claw at the entrance, their relentless groans a harbinger of impending doom. Lisa, her face set in grim determination, stepped forward. "I'll hold them off. You have to finish the ritual." "No, Lisa," Alex protested. "It's too dangerous." Lisa's eyes met Alex's, and in them he saw a fierce resolve. "It's the only way. We need to end this." With that, Lisa grabbed a makeshift weapon and charged toward the zombies, her courage in stark contrast to the encroaching horror. The chamber's walls seemed to close in, and Alex could see the determination in Sarah's eyes as she continued the incantations. He fought through his own fears, focusing on the ritual and fragile hope it represented. The darkness around them grew heavier, more suffocating. Alex could barely see the symbols Sarah was tracing, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every second felt like an eternity. The ritual demanded a sacrifice, a personal price to pay for the chance to break the curse. Lisa's cries of struggle echoed from outside, mingling with the sounds of the advancing undead. The ritual's power surged, the runes glowing brighter as Sarah's voice rose in intensity. Alex, his fears pushed to the brink, fought to stay focused, driven by the need to honor Lisa's sacrifice and the hope of saving what remained of their world. As the final words of the incantation left Sarah's lips, the chamber was engulfed in a blinding light. The darkness howled in fury, the very fabric of reality seeming to tear. In that harrowing moment, the outcome hung in precarious balance, and Alex braced for the unknown, praying that their sacrifice would not be in vain. Chapter 8. The Aftermath. The chamber was eerily silent, save for the faint crackle of dissipating energy. The blinding light had given way to darkness, and the oppressive weight of the curse seemed to have lifted. Alex, Sarah, and Lisa stood amidst the wreckage of their struggle, their breaths ragged and their faces streaked with grime and sweat. Alex stumbled to his knees, the exhaustion of the ordeal crashing over him in waves. The ritual had worked, the zombies had disintegrated into dust, and the darkness had receded. But the cost was etched deeply into his soul. Lisa lay lifeless near the entrance, her sacrifice a heartbreaking reminder of the price they had paid. Sarah, her eyes hollow with grief, slowly approached Alex. "It's over," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We did it. The curse is broken." Alex nodded, unable to find words. The reality of their loss was overwhelming. They had succeeded, but at what cost? The weight of Lisa's sacrifice and the trauma of their experience pressed heavily on him. He looked around the chamber, now free from the malevolent presence, but marked by the aftermath of their struggle. As they emerged from the burial site, the fog was beginning to lift. The first rays of dawn pierced the horizon, casting a tentative light over the town. The once ruined Ravenswood was now eerily calm, its streets devoid of the undead that had once terrorized its inhabitants. Yet, the sense of relief was tempered by deep sorrow. Sarah and Alex wandered through the town, now a place of somber recovery. They found the surviving townspeople, many of whom had taken refuge in the church. The once panic-stricken faces were now marked by exhaustion and relief. The curse had ended, but the scars it left would take time to heal. Alex glanced at Sarah, who was quietly comforting the townspeople. He saw in her a resilience born from their shared trauma, a quiet strength that had emerged through their ordeal. He realized how much he had changed. His once skeptical view of the supernatural now replaced by a profound understanding of its dark power. The town began to rebuild, slowly and cautiously. The burial site was sealed once more, its secrets buried under layers of stone and earth. But as Alex stood by the newly erected monument to those who had fallen, he couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness they had confronted might one day return. The ritual had ended the immediate threat, but the echoes of their struggle lingered in the corners of their minds. The ancient evil had been thwarted, but its shadow remained. The survivors faced a future scarred by their experiences, a haunting reminder of the cost of confronting the darkness. As Alex and Sarah left Ravenswood behind, they carried with them the weight of their loss and the knowledge that the fight against ancient evils was never truly over. Town was safe for now, but the world was vast, and the darkness, though subdued, had left its mark on their souls. The journey had changed them forever, and the haunting presence of what they had faced would linger long after the echoes of their battle had faded.